Welcome to the Mind Your Business Show. I'm your host, Tony Calloway, your private money godfather, and today's topic is one that a lot of people have been asking me about, so go get your pen and paper and get ready to take some notes because we're going to talk today about real estate investing using the lease option strategy. We'll see you when we come back. Welcome to the Mind Your Business Show. I'm your host, Tony Calloway, the private money godfather, your private money godfather. And as I said in the intro, today's topic is going to be in the general range of discussing creative real estate investing. A lot of people contact the Private Money Syndicate and they're looking to invest in real estate. But in addition to the traditional way that most people think of getting money from the bank, and as well as the opportunities to get private capital from the Private Money Syndicate, in conjunction with those, there are some strategies that are a little bit out of the box. And one of those is using the lease option strategy for investing in real estate. And that's our topic for today. So what you're going to learn is we're going to define what is that word lease option? What does it mean? And what are the benefits of investing in real estate using this strategy? I'm going to help you to understand how to construct a lease option deal and some of the key things, renewable versus long-term options, and then what are some of the key points to ensure that you are successful in using the lease option strategy in your real estate investing. So let's get right into it. Here's a definition of lease option, okay? It says that is an agreement giving the renter, the person who's leasing, the renter a choice to purchase the rented property during or at the end of the rental period. So that's the lease part. It also precludes the owner from offering the property for sale to anyone else. And when the term expires, the renter must either exercise the option, which means they either buy it or they have to renew it or they forfeit their option. A lease option is also known as lease with option to purchase. Lease with option to buy. A few different phraseologies there, but the two aspects of a lease option are actually represented in the word itself, lease and option. All right, so as we discuss this matter, I want you to understand that the Private Money Syndicate, who is sponsoring the Mind Your Business Show, is here to help you to power your dreams with private money. So how about reaching out to us either through our website, privatemoneysyndicate.com, or you can give us a call at 706-888-3719. Now, when it comes down to this lease option strategy, let's understand why an investor would use a lease option. Well, there are 5 reasons, and the first of those is that sometimes people just don't have the money or the credit that they need to get the financing to be able to execute a traditional purchase. So from that standpoint, this is where you have an opportunity to use the lease option as a means of controlling the property even though you don't yet own it. So it gives you an opportunity to accumulate the money or to get your credit right. We say fix your credit so that you can qualify for financing either traditional or non-traditional. The second reason why an investor would use a lease option is it allows a potential buyer to save up money for the purchase and at the same time build their credit by making regular on-time payments. So you're actually able to accomplish 2 things at once by having the time that you're buying with the rental portion to be able to put yourself in a position to execute on the option. The third thing is the renter can benefit from a chance to buy a property in the future at today's prices. See, when you exercise the lease option strategy, you identify the price for the purchase. And now depending upon how much time you've been able to set yourself up with in terms of being able to exercise the option, you've determined the price, which in most cases, in most markets, property values go up. So this is an opportunity for you to lock it in, as the old saying goes, and that's a third reason why an investor would use a lease option. The fourth is the property may not qualify for certain loans due to the fact that it needs repairs. Now, by the renter first controlling the property, he can go in and make those improvements and then later have the property able to qualify for the financing because all these repairs and renovations have been done. The property is able to appreciate in terms of its value from whence the person acquired it under the lease option strategy, and now you're able to not only get the financing, but because you had time to save up money, you've had time to get your credit together, you've had a chance to work on the property, then you're ready to be able to execute your purchase under the option agreement. So that's number 4. And the 5th reason is that the lease option takes the property off the market. Now that might seem somewhat, why is that important? Well, if someone's seeking to sell their property, even if they're having a hard time selling it for various reasons in a particular market or a particular set of economic circumstances, if it's a good deal to you, you don't want to lose that deal, right? So using a lease option strategy, because you control the fact that a person can't sell the property, that's a 5th reason why an investor would use the lease option. Now let's look at the other side of this coin. Why would a seller agree to a lease option? Well, there are a few reasons why someone would agree to, instead of getting all cash for the sale of their property, engage in a lease option. The first of those I've alluded to a little bit in the last answer is trouble selling the property. Now let's just suppose, for the sake of this conversation, that the property has some substantial repair that needs to be done to it. Maybe the roof is leaking. Maybe there's some issues with the plumbing. Maybe it just needs paint and flooring and a few other little more superficial and cosmetic things. Well, that kind of makes it tough to sell a property, especially when they're looking to sell it for a particular price and people are finding other options that are more ready to move into, so to speak. So the seller might be willing to take the lease option opportunity to actually get the property off their hands, which is the second point. It's a faster way to eliminate the burden. Now, let's say they're moving away and they have a mortgage here. Well, with the lease option, the lease part, they've got somebody taking over and making payments, which now frees them up in terms of a cash flow situation to move on to wherever will be next. The third opportunity for a seller is collect higher than market rents. Typically, with someone selling a property on a lease option, there are going to be some things we'll talk about a little bit later called rent credits. But to the seller, they're getting, let's say instead of getting $1,000 a month for rents, they might get $1,250. And as part of that extra $250, not only is that money going in their pocket, but they're also able to give credit toward the down payment, which is called rent credit. We'll get to that a little bit later. But in the immediate sense to the seller, that's more money that they're getting for that same property. And then it's a creative financing opportunity. Being able to sell, make it easy to buy. Okay, is always something, I don't care what your product is, here we're talking about real estate, is going to allow you to transact business faster and often more advantageously. So those are reasons why a seller, and we call these, you got to find the right situation. You got to find, if you're an investor or someone looking to buy a property, if you want to move into it and live in it yourself, you got to find a specific situation where these facets line up for both you, the buyer, or the investor, as well as for the seller, and it benefits everyone. It's what they call that win-win situation. And so that can happen with lease options. And again, the Private Money Syndicate, who is sponsoring the Mind Your Business show again today, is here to help you not only with capitalization, but also consulting, to help you, as we have with many of our other clients, find out how you can own real estate as an owner, investor, as well as how you can sell your property, as I've actually sold properties using this lease option strategy to help you to continue to grow your portfolio, cash flow, and all those other things. So again, schedule a consultation at privatemoneysyndicate.com, or you can reach out by calling us at 706-888-3719. All right, so let's get into it. How do you make a lease option deal? Well, there are two parts of this thing. I want to make sure you're crystal clear as to what those are. A lot of times I would tell my students when I'm teaching college courses, I cannot make this class easier, but I can make it absolutely crystal clear what you need to do in order to get an A in the class. Now, I can't do any more for you, so I'm going to do exactly the same thing for you right now as we discuss how to make a lease option deal. The first part is a lease agreement. What the lease agreement does is it gives you control of the property. Now again, whether you're moving into this house to live in it or you're wanting to buy it as an investment, you can control property and make money off of it. You don't have to own it, but again, the lease gives you that control with very specific circumstances applied to your control of the property, and it gives you certain privileges and rights and protects your interests in that regard. And again, it gives the certain segment of the collateral side of that to the seller or the lessor in this case, because they know what their rents are going to be and they understand that you have certain responsibilities to the property as well. So that's the lease agreement. The second part, as you see, is the option agreement. Now, the option gives you the right to purchase. It does not obligate you to purchase, okay? It gives you the option, which is optional, to purchase at some time during the terms of that agreement. So again, we have another contract. So these two go together, an agreement to control, an agreement that gives you right to purchase. Now, you're going to see this third bullet down there on several slides, because I cannot overemphasize that every agreement in real estate must, and I say must, be in writing. Now, I'm sure most of you have watched Judge Judy. You know, I'm kind of a fanatic watcher. But, you know, so many times people have these verbal agreements where there's no such thing under the law as a verbal agreement as it relates to real estate. So again, remember, you got to have all these things in writing. Now, let's look at the elements of a lease. There are a few points here. Your rent payments must allow your investment to generate positive cash flow. Now, again, if you're somebody who's looking to lease a property to live in it, whatever y'all come up with is fine. But as an investor, you have to leave some overhead that's going to allow you to rent that property at what would be considered market rents and still make a positive cash flow, even if it's, you know, not a significant cash flow, because again, part of your strategy in using the lease option is ultimately you want to take ownership of the property down the road, and there's some mitigating circumstances in the here and now that are keeping you from doing that. But where you can leave yourself $50, $100, maybe $200 a month positive cash flow, you've got to negotiate the rent that you're paying to the lessor or the seller and leave yourself enough margin to rent the property and still make positive cash flow. Now, when we look at the duration, it's traditional for most real estate leases to be 1 year, but it can be a multi-year lease. It could be 1 year, 2 year, 3 years, or it could be what we call renewable, which means at the end of a year, as an example, you have another option to renew the lease for another year. Okay, that renewable clause is important because again, you can dictate what your rents will be, if they'll be the same, if they'll go up a little bit, or whatever the case may be. Those are all very important things that have to be laced into that contract that give you the control that you need to position yourself to be able to buy the property. Again, in addition to those, another is that the investor must have the right to sublease a property. Now, just because you're renting a property, you plan on leasing it out to somebody else, unless you have the right to sublease written into that agreement, you do not have the right to do that. The landlord or the owner of the property say, no, you can't, I leased it to you. You can't turn around and lease it to somebody else. Now, it's very common in many cases for landlords to allow the lessor to sublease, but again, it has to be in writing, and it has to be in the contract. And the investor must have another right, a very important one, especially if the property needs some type of renovations or repairs done to it. You have to have the right to modify the property. Now, if I was a landlord and I was going to lease you my property, I want to know, what do you plan on doing to it? Because if I wind up having to get this property back, I don't want it to be all torn up. So to the extent that this is for an investor or a person wanting to control and then ultimately own this property, if it needs work, then if you fail to perform on the agreements here, if I'm the owner and you tell me I'm going to fix the roof, I'm going to fix the floor, I'm going to paint the place and stuff like that, I'll say, buddy, you got it. Go right ahead and do all that, because if you don't perform, I get back something better than what I lease to you. So those are two important things that you need to include in your contract: the right to sublease and the right to modify the property. And as you see at the bottom again, every agreement in real estate must be in writing. All right, so now I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but I want to bring it into this discussion of lease, and that's something called rent credit. The comment I made earlier is that with a lease option strategy, as the seller or the lessor, as we're talking about the lease part of it, I can get above market rents. Well, that rent credit is usually that bit above, and it's negotiable. It can be whatever we agree to in writing that's going to be credited toward the down payment. So just read as it says, here's a portion of the rental payment that becomes a part of the down payment for the home if the option is exercised. However, renter forfeits the credited sum if the property is not purchased by the expiration of the agreement. So let's just suppose that we had a 1 year lease And concurrently, we had a 1-year option for me to buy the house at a certain price. And every month of the rent that I pay, whatever it is immaterial. But we agreed that $250 of that rent payment was being credited toward the down payment on the house. So if we do $250 times 12, that's $3,000. So over the course of me paying my rent over that 12 months, I've accumulated, in this example, $3,000 that can be applied toward the down payment when I go toward the actual purchase of the home. And this is really important because this is negotiable. It can be as much as you say, as little as you say, and it can be none whatsoever. But the fact of the matter is, oftentimes, to help the person get in a position to buy this rent credit opportunity is something that is written into the contracts that will allow the purchaser and the investor or the person who's going to live in it as an owner occupant to be able to start accumulating money while they're also paying rent. That's going to help to execute the ultimate transaction before or at least at the end of the agreement. Now, elements of the option agreement. Now, this is the other part. We just talked about the lease agreement, which is a contract unto itself, but these two have to coordinate. This is a very important thing. The lease and the option agreement have to coordinate. So when we look at the option agreement, you got to agree on the amount you pay for option consideration. So it's kind of like a fee that I want to pay the seller just to have this agreement. Now, it could be $1 or it could be whatever y'all agree to. Okay, this is a negotiable facet, but you're going to pay something, and I always call it hurting money. If I was a seller, I want you to pay enough of this thing to make me feel good about the fact that I'm delaying the ultimate transaction, and if you fail to perform, that's just some more money I kept. I mean, if I'm the seller, I get to keep this fee, and I get to keep it anyway, and any of this rent credit that I'm able to accumulate as additional rental income that otherwise, if you exercise, is going to be money towards your down payment. So all these things are giving that seller a reason to want to go into this option agreement with you. Now, the other thing you have to agree on is what's the duration going to be. It could be 1 year or more, or the option can be renewable. And again, it's got to be in writing. Now, continuing with the option agreement, the purchase price of the property is something you got to agree on. So let's just say that we'll pick a number out of the sky, $200,000. That is my strike price for the option. So whenever I execute my purchase part, whether it's within that year or if we did renewals, that is what I'm paying for the property, is all defined within the contract. As well, you have to have, now this is very important, clauses for property insurance and equitable interest matters. Is a tongue twister. Clauses for property insurance and equitable interest matters. Now think about this, folks. I'm renting a property that I ultimately want to buy. I'm accumulating credit toward my down payment to buy it. I paid the seller option consideration, but I don't own the property, and I'm not the beneficiary or the person who benefits from the insurance should it burn up or blow away in a tornado or something like that. So from the standpoint, various clauses that require that the seller has proper insurance on the property that could return it to its original condition, as well as clauses that state that if the property were to be damaged by what they call that, nature, what they call those things? Anyway, natural events, natural causes, yeah, that's it. Then, you'll be able to be made whole by returning fees and things like that to you. So again, that is something that you can write into the contract that is properly insured, but if something happens at the point in time that you want to exercise and it cannot be turned over to you in good order, then you will be made whole by the return of certain fees and monies that you have paid as part of the agreement. The third bullet there is record the option contract with the county deed records to encumber the property. This is huge. Now, you can have all this stuff written out, but if you don't record that option agreement, one of the things we say is it keeps the seller from selling the property. Well, if you don't record it, there's nothing on record that says that he's encumbered the property. So it's on you as the person making the agreement to make sure this option is recorded with the property records. So if he tries some unscrupulous stuff, to sell it out from under you, that can't happen because we call this clouding the title to the property. So once you've got the agreement and everything, go down to the property book records, and in this part of the country. I say Muscogee County, Georgia, and over here in Alabama, I think it's like $25. It may have gone up with inflation, but not much more for you to have than to put that in the property record. So wherever you are in the world, wherever you are in the country, that's what you need to do, and whatever it costs you to do it, probably pennies, but make sure that happens, okay? All right, so now let's look at the strategy as it relates to renewable versus long option durations. All right, now, this is something that you negotiate with the seller. Now, the longer the option, the more things that you can do over that period of time. So now, as far as what you negotiate, it's got to be a meeting of the minds. Both you and the person who's selling their property under this lease option agreement have to agree, all right? So now, whatever latitude you need to make them feel good and to accomplish your outcomes and objectives are what you want to do here. Now, the key thing is it says here that renewable or extended duration must correspond to the renewal duration of the lease. So you don't have an option that runs out in a year, but you got a 2-year lease, okay? Although you could exercise within that year, well, what was the point of you having a 2-year lease if your intent is to buy the property? Now, from the standpoint, you can do it that way, but it makes a little sense. So again, they need to correspond. And now, if you're going to do a renewable lease, often you have to pay an additional option consideration called a renewal fee. So it could be, $500 or $1,000, whatever. But if you've got the contract written such that you have the right to renew, you also want to state in that agreement what the renewal fee would be and all the terms that are associated with that renewal. All right, so now again, looking at renewable versus long-term options, the renewable is often easier for the seller to accept because at each interval, remember, they're getting extra rent under the lease side of things, so that's cool. But again, instead of you saying a 5-year duration, I'm making this an exaggeration. They're like, well, dang, I'm going to be getting a few $100s extra every year. When am I going to get my money in the lump sum, so to speak? But if you say, okay, at the end of 1 year, if circumstances, and remember, things can change in the economy, things can change in real estate, all kind of stuff can happen. So again, make time your friend. Don't set yourself up for failure. So this renewable gives the seller more comfort with the fact that, okay, if you don't execute, you're going to get some more money. Everybody's got that little greed gland, right? All right, so understanding that, you get to use that to your advantage as a person looking to control and ultimately own the property. And again, ensure that all terms of any renewal are established in the contract. Every nuance. Now, if you want to get an attorney or someone to help you with, again, nuance, because the contract is something that you and the seller have to agree to. So all the different attributes, there's very little boilerplate that I would say you should ascribe to. So even if you have a template that gives you most of the construct of this, again, all these things that are I'll call it the coloring within the lines for the agreement are things that you want to make sure codified in that contract, and you might well have an attorney to do that and support you in that. And again, remember that every agreement in real estate must be in what? Writing. All right, and last little bit here is pursuing longer duration options is important if you need to improve your credit. Now, most people can get their credit scores up to be able to qualify for financing, I'll say well within a year, but I wouldn't take it, for granted that that can happen. Don't do 6 months for sure. And if, again, you got to do a renewable, if something happens, your credit score doesn't get to where you can qualify for financing, at least you've given yourself latitude. Give yourself an opportunity in the agreement to make sure that your conditions of having the money for down payment as well as the credit score to qualify for the financing are all going to be in place. And it says offer acceptable purchase price increase or larger renewal fee to make the deal attractive. Now, here's something that if you're the seller, you don't want me to say. Now, you can agree to something in the contract, but then if circumstances put it in a favorable position for you as the buyer, you can always renegotiate. So let's just suppose, as an example, I say I'm going to buy your property for $200,000, and if we had to renew, I'll buy it for $220,000. So now we finished the first year, but right at the end of the middle of the second year, I haven't gone all the way out. I say, hey, look, I'm where I can buy your property, but now if we do $210,000 right now, I can take it off your hands today. And now I can say, now we said within the next, let's just say this was the 14th month. So we did 12 months, renewed for another 12. But just 2 months later, I say, look, I can buy it right now, but I can't do 220, but I can give you 210. Now, would you wait another 10 months to get that extra $10,000? Maybe you would, okay? But what I'm saying is you can try it and see what happens. So again, some of these things you want to protect yourself, you want to codify in the agreement, but somewhere to the point that the seller can't take you out of bounds, okay? But you can attempt to renegotiate as the buyer some of these aspects in terms of sales price and stuff like that. And if they want to agree to it, fine, but you obviously have to honor the contract unless it's modified. So all I'm saying is negotiate, negotiate, negotiate. All right, so now let's look at the keys to a successful lease option investment. Now again, I'm talking to those folks who want to use this as a real estate investment strategy. What you have to do is evaluate the property considering cash flow and accurate after repair market value if repairs are needed. So to the extent that these are one of the big things I caution. They say, well, my real estate agent said it would be worth, $200,000 after I fixed the roof, after I put the carpet in, after I got it painted and all this other kind of stuff. The biggest and most important thing I'm telling you about is a comparable or comp has got to be looking like everything that it was comp to. Now, just because it's 3-bedroom, 2-bath, has the same 2,500 square feet does not mean it's a comp. If the finishes aren't the same, let's say that the properties that your agent, I'm not bashing real estate agents, I'm just saying this happens a lot, okay? Says that, oh, it will comp because it's similar, but these other properties that he's comparing or she's comparing to have hardwood flooring, have granite countertops, upgraded kitchens and baths, but yours has carpet and you hadn't done anything other than just repair the kitchen and repair the bathroom, you might come up a few $1,000s short. So the key thing is understand what you're comping to as far as that's concerned. And again, we talked about it earlier on the cash flow side, you want to make sure you've got positive cash flow coming in after you have got to cover the rent you got to pay to the seller or the lessor who you got to pay to, and anything over that you collect is going to your bottom line as positive cash flow during this lease phase. And you have to consider your exit strategy when buying. Now, are you lease optioning this property, again, to live in it, or you lease optioning this property to rent it, or you lease optioning this property so you can fix it up, get some rental income, and then sell it to that person who's lease optioning it from you? It can go that way. You can roll lease options, all right? But the key thing is you have to have at least 2 exit strategies that will make you whole and ideally make you profit. And all that needs to be calculated and factored when you're going into this consideration for buying this property using this strategy. All right, also, big one, do not fall victim to FOMO. How many of y'all know what FOMO stands for? FOMO stands for fear of missing out. It's almost like, I remember when I was a kid and I was out fishing with my aunt and my younger brother, and threw the bait out there, and I got the tug and the sinker went down, and I reeled it in. I had a fish about that big, okay? But I caught one. I want to keep this fish. Okay, it doesn't make sense. But my point is, a lot of times people, I got somebody to agree to do a lease with option to buy. I got to do it. Look, if the details of the evaluation of property, again, your exit strategy, your cash flow, ultimately your profitability don't make sense, let it go. There's plenty of fish in the sea. There's probably plenty of fish in that pond. I could have thrown that back, come back 3 or 4 years later and caught him. Might have been a good deal. So don't get stuck on just because I got one that I got to do it, okay? Don't fall victim to fear of missing out, FOMO. And I suggest to anybody who's a new real estate investor to work with an experienced mentor on your first few projects. I always tell people you're going to pay for your education. So if you tell somebody, hey, I'll come in on this with you, I'll put up some of the money or whatever, and we'll split the profit. Let's say the profit was $40,000, you gave up $20,000. You're gonna pay $20,000 one way or the other. You're gonna pay $20,000 because you messed up somewhere else. You're gonna pay $20,000 because you went in with somebody and learned how to do it right. All I'm trying to say is you're always gonna pay for your education. So I would suggest that education may even be less expensive, because here's the other thing: people don't do it at all because they're stuck and afraid, and that could cost you everything. So work and invest with an experienced mentor on your first few deals, and let that training wheel period get you in the right realm of understanding of processes, things that can go wrong. I always say there are plenty of landmines under the sand and booby traps. So these are opportunities for you to work with someone who's been there, done that, to help you to be successful in your first few deals. All right, now This episode is sponsored by the Private Money Syndicate, and we're here to power your dreams with private money. And whether it's a lease option or any of the other creative real estate strategies I'll be talking about in future episodes, or just traditional transaction, we're here to help you. So get in touch with us. Go explore our website at privatemoneysyndicate.com. There's lots of information that can teach you about many other things, whether it's business or real estate related, or you can give us a call at 706-888-3719. All right, we're coming down to the wire. So let's recap. What have we learned today? All right, we learned how lease options can help you to buy property and the important terms to have in a lease, as well as important terms for you to have in your option agreement. Remember, everything in real estate has to be in writing. So what terms, not word definition terms, but agreement terms do you have in these contracts? All right, everything must be in writing. Can't say it enough. And in addition to that, you need to file this option contract with the county deed record to cloud the title that keep the seller, if they should be so inclined to do so, from selling this property out from under you. Can't do it if it's recorded. They have to honor the agreement. Some key negotiables in option renewals that you want to be able to make sure you institute, and then some of the keys to a successful lease option investment. So those are the things that we covered today, and I hope that you are excited about what you learned and how you can use this lease option strategy for you to get started with or to expand your real estate investment portfolio. Now here's a book, one of the few out here on this topic, and it is, I call this my brother from another mother, Matthew Chan. I said we're going to make Rush Hour 4. But in any case, he wrote the book Turnkey Investing Lease Options. And it's available, so you can go out on Amazon and pick yourself up a copy. But it goes into a lot of examples and stories and some depths of the strategies that I took time to talk to you about today. And in fact, he was one of my mentors way back when I first started investing in real estate. And in addition to the fact that I learned a lot from this book and from him, I've actually bought properties using lease options, and I've sold properties using the lease option strategy, because it is one of the killer strategies out there for someone who doesn't necessarily have the cash or the credit right now, or their circumstances related to the property. That time can allow you to heal. Not only can you allow you to heal, but you can cash flow in the short term and profit big time in the future. All right, so we're wrapping it up. The Private Money Syndicate is here to help you to power your dreams with private money. So reach out to us at privatemoneysyndicate.com or give us a call at 706-888-3719. And if you have any questions or ideas for upcoming episodes, please reach out to us at the 706-888-3719 number, or email me at Tony@privatemoneygodfather.com. And of course, we're available when you visit our website. So thanks for tuning in. It's always a pleasure to be here with you and to teach you and to share ideas with you. And we'll see you on the next one. Take care.